Living Faith TV.
And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food." Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. We are going to be making some very quick, easy, and traditional recipes that you can serve at your Thanksgiving dinner. We're gonna make an easy crock pot turkey breast. So for those of you that don't want to roast the whole turkey or do that whole shebang, a crock pot turkey breast is delicious, it's moist, it's so, so good. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna have my mother's traditional stuffing, or dressing actually. Technically, if it's inside the turkey, it's stuffing. If it's outside the turkey, baked in a pan, which is how we like it, it's dressing. Didn't know if you knew that or not. But anyway, we're gonna get started. Now, I have a stick of butter, because this is Thanksgiving after all, and we are going to cut up some celery that has been washed, and I'm gonna keep the leaves because the leaves have a lot of flavor. Now, whenever I'm doing this, I have to cook extra because I have a confession. I sneak and eat the onions and the celery. Mom used to get so tickled at me because she would have to make a lot of extra because I would just get a dish and have the onions and celery because I dearly love it. So while that's melting, we're just gonna dice up some celery, about 4 stalks or so, depending on how much you like celery. I happen to love it, so I use a lot. It's one of my favorites. And it is traditional in stuffing or dressing, depending on where you're cooking it. At least in my household. So get the leaves, include them because they do have a lot of flavor. And we're just gonna add that to our butter. And I'm actually gonna add just a little bit of vegetable oil to help saute these vegetables and to keep the butter from burning as quickly. So add your celery. I got a lot of celery going on here. It's okay, because I'm gonna sneak a bowl. Just let that go. Then we're gonna need, probably 1 good-sized onion. Will be enough. Dice him up and get him in the pan. There are so many different kinds of dressings. I do a cranberry stuffing. I do a wild rice and mushroom stuffing. I do all kinds of different stuffings. But on Thanksgiving, you do not mess with tradition, and it has to be in my household, it just has to be the traditional stuffing or dressing. I can't add apples or nuts or any of that stuff to my Thanksgiving table. Now, I do that throughout the rest of the year, but I don't know what it is, but there's something about those traditional recipes. You just don't mess with them. People get disappointed, and you can add a couple of things here and there, you know, new recipes, but boy, traditions are a big deal at Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter. We have certain foods that we eat at each holiday. At least in my family, we do. My mother always made this dressing. This is her recipe. The only thing that she added that I'm not adding today is some fresh bread. She always started saving up her fresh bread, the heels or the ends, you know, and would keep them in the freezer for about a month before Thanksgiving. She'd start that, and then she'd thaw them and add them to her dressing. But I didn't have any, so we're not going to do that. But I am going to use the bread cubes because she did use that too. I always had to help my mom. I have so many memories of being in the kitchen with my mother. It just really breaks my heart now because she's no longer with us, but it also warms my heart to pass on the traditions that, you know, she gave me. I'm using fresh sage. Now, my mom did not use fresh sage, but I like the flavor of fresh sage in my dressing. Now, sage is a strong herb, so don't do too much. Oh, it smells so good. I grow mine in the summertime, so I usually will still have some fresh sage. But this time of the year, the grocery stores just stock it for Thanksgiving. And it's not expensive. I think that package was $1. And worth it to add that fresh flavor. I just cut it up and then I take my knife. Remember how we do our herbs? We keep one end on the board and then just lift it with the other one. Now, I don't want to brown these. I just want to soften the vegetables, and that'll take just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and add my sage to my pan. And you can totally do this like the night before. Some celery seed, about a teaspoon or so of celery seed. And then, of course, the traditional poultry seasoning, in the jar, the dried poultry seasoning. That's just a staple that my mother used. A couple of teaspoons or so of that to taste. Mom never measured. She just added it till it tasted good. And then some salt. Now, remember, we're making quite a bit of stuffing here, dressing. I keep wanting to call it stuffing because that's what she called it. But technically, it is dressing. We're going to add about a teaspoon of salt, maybe about a teaspoon and a half of salt, because I do have a lot of bread coming in. And some freshly ground pepper. I don't think anything smells more like Thanksgiving than this delicious aroma coming off of this. This is Thanksgiving to me. The smell of the onion and the celery and the herbs that we put in there, the poultry seasoning, just smells like Thanksgiving. Smells like home. Smells like my mom's house. My mom cooked Thanksgiving dinner for a lot of people every year. And I know she would always she started the night before, and she would have this huge turkey. It was like 22 pounds, humongous turkey. And I would always, you know, before I got married and moved out, I would help her make the stuffing the night before because my mom stuffed her turkey and put him in the oven, she always called him a him, the night before Thanksgiving. And on low, like 275 to 300 degrees, and just let him roast slowly all night long, and it was so good. Now, I am using 2 bags of just the purchased breadcrumb cubes. Now, I'm using cornbread and just the breadcrumb cubes. Because Mom would add in some cornbread if she had any leftover cornbread. And so I'm going to use those. I do mine in the pan because I don't like to wash dishes. And so I'm just going to kind of combine those together. Then I'm going to add my celery and onion and seasonings right in there with all the butter and all that stuff. Now that's hot, so I'm not going to use my hands. Let that cool for just a minute. And I have pretty tough hands. You learn when you're cooking through the years, you do develop some tough skin. Somebody asked me one time, said, do you have asbestos hands? I kind of do. Because I can go in, once something just barely cools off, it doesn't bother me. Clean hands, cook's best friend. Go in there and stir that together. That's still a little hot. So I'm gonna use my spoon. Once you get the celery and the onion kind of evenly distributed, then we're gonna go in with just some I like the store-bought If you have homemade, do homemade. It will depend on how much bread you've got. But about, I don't know, a cup, we'll start with a cup. And then we will see how that ends up. Again, clean hands are a cook's best friend. This is a great job for the kids. Once that's cooled, let them wash their hands and get in there with you. This is what I did when I was little. This was my job when I was small. So you can let your kids do this. This was a big deal to me when I was a little girl, to get to do the mixing of the stuffing. So pat it down just like that. It's not completely done yet, hang on. And then we're gonna pour a little bit more stock over top because I don't like dry stuffing. I like my dressing or stuffing to be very moist. One little hint for you, if you are stuffing your turkey, if you put your stuffing in the turkey to cook, make sure this is completely cooled before you stuff the turkey, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for some food poisoning. Make sure that the dressing is completely cold before you stuff that turkey. Now this just needs to go into 350-degree oven. We're going to cover it with some aluminum foil. I like the non-stick foil to kind of hold in that moisture. Make sure that it's moist. Cover this 350 degrees for about an hour. And then you've got a wonderful side dressing to go along with your turkey. I'm just gonna take a quick break, clean this mess up. When I come back, we're gonna make a dessert, and we're gonna make the star of the show, the turkey. All right, now our dressing is in the oven and we are gonna start on dessert. And we're gonna be making one of my favorite things ever, and that is a pumpkin spice delight. I make this basic recipe many different ways. I make a lemon delight in the spring that is just divine, and then I have that, I love it for breakfast the next morning. This one is perfect for fall. So, I like a nut crust, so I have in here about 2 cups of walnuts that I'm actually going to chop up real fine, because this is gonna be the crust. You could use pecans if you wanted to, but I like the walnuts the best. And walnuts are very healthy. Don't go too far, or you will have nut butter. But you want them to be kind of fine. You want about 2 cups for this size dish. Be careful of that blade, it's very sharp. Get those in there. Watch your fingers, please. I don't let my kids do that. And then spread those out, and you're gonna add about 1/2 cup of flour, just all-purpose flour. And then a stick of melted butter. You're gonna stir that around. Let me get a spoon. Again, you could use your hands. I use my hands a lot. And I'll be using them again in just a second, because that just drives me crazy. I've washed my hands, they're clean. Just stir that in there, and then you can get a feel for it to see if you need to add some more flour. You want it to spread out like a crust, but you don't want it too wet. So I'm gonna need the full 1/2 cup. Stir that in to where you don't see any more dry flour mixture. And then just pat it into the bottom of your bacon dish. I have put a little tiny bit of vegetable oil on a paper towel and pat it evenly, and I just put that around the pan so that this will come out. And this needs to bake at about 350 for about 20 minutes and then cool completely. And we'll start on the next layer. So this just needs to go in the oven. All right, now our dessert's nut crust is baking in the oven, and we're gonna get our turkey ready to go. Now, this is ideal for Thanksgiving because it can cook in your crock pot, and your oven is freed up for other things, your stovetop is freed up, and it just is so easy. So, I have a boneless, or not a boneless, but a turkey breast that you can just thaw in the refrigerator, and I put him in my crock pot, and I'm gonna use an onion, and I am not going to peel this onion because we're gonna strain out the juices, and this will add a lot of flavor to that broth that you can use to make either soup or the gravy for your turkey. You know, there's lots of uses for that broth, so flavor it up while you're going. I'm gonna add some salt to my turkey breast and some fresh pepper. The only disadvantage to cooking one in the crock pot is the skin does not get crisp, but I personally don't eat the skin anyway, so it doesn't bother me at all. But just know that your turkey, the skin won't get browned, so you will need to remember that. I'm gonna add just some broth, the remaining box of my broth that I didn't use for the stuffing, and then another one. And the great thing about these boxes is if you don't use it all, put the cap back on it, put it in the refrigerator, and it'll keep a couple, 3 days in your refrigerator for other uses. I love these boxes. Now I wanna add enough, and it will depend on the size of your turkey. I want it to come up about halfway because remember, he's gonna exude some turkey broth out of him, so we don't wanna do it too full. And then, where'd my lid go? Right behind me. Here's my lid. Put your lid on there. Depending on when you need it, you can do either low or high. I'm gonna put him on low and let him go for about 8 to 10 hours. Perfect to do the night before. I do this real often at home. I will just put my turkey in the crock pot, put it on low, and let it cook all night long. Or, you know, if you wanna do this on a non-holiday, great meal, put your turkey breast in the crock pot of a morning, and then when you come home from work, your turkey's done. Great dish to have any day of the week. So we will just let our turkey cook. He's just gotta go for about 8 to 10 hours until he's cooked through, and you can use a thermometer to see what the temperature is, but a lot of the turkey breasts have those pop-up timers, and I find them to be pretty accurate. So what we're gonna do now is make the filling for that nut crust that's coming. This is such a good dessert, and you can make this a day ahead of time and your dessert is done, and it really is very good. I have a block of cream cheese here that I'm going to put into a larger bowl. Needs to be softened, you know, kind of room temperature. And it's perfectly fine to use the 1/3 less fat cream cheese. I don't like the fat-free cream cheese. I don't think it tastes good at all. That's my personal opinion. but I don't mind the 1/3 fat, you know, 1/3 less fat. 1 container of just a frozen non-dairy whipped topping, and you want about half of this or so. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact. You could add some vanilla if you wanted to. They make this in the vanilla flavored. I'm not going to add the vanilla, but you can if you want to. And then just a little mixer. And then we're just gonna combine these two slowly at first to get that mixed up. And you can do this stage while it's cooking, and then just put this in the refrigerator for when your nut crust is ready. Turn it up once you get it going. You just want to combine those things. And I'm going to need a spatula, so let's get one over here to scrape down my sides. And if you don't like pumpkin flavors, I mean, I do, but if you don't, you can use any flavor pudding that you want to in this dish, and it is delicious. One of my absolute favorites is lemon. Same steps except lemon pudding. Love it. Now, I don't want to put that on my board because I cut that onion, and I don't want that flavor in my mixture. I'm lightly tapping this. I'm not hitting it hard, so I'm not going to chip that glass. I'm going to set this to the side. I've got just shy of 4 cups of milk, and I'm going to use the same beaters because it doesn't matter. It's going to go in the same thing. It's just a separate layer, but you can use the same beaters. And I've got just shy of 4 cups now seasonally. Now this is one of those things that you won't find year round, but about Thanksgiving, you will find the packages of pumpkin spice instant pudding. This stuff is so good. My Austin, this is his favorite. He loves this pumpkin spice pudding. So while I can get it, because it's pretty shelf stable for a while, I buy like 15 packages of it and keep it until the next year because he loves it. And I make little tarts and things out of it, but it really is very good. And then I use 2 boxes of that. And then you just simply mix this up. And it's okay if a little bit of that cream cheese gets in there. That's perfectly fine. And then this will need to set for just a couple of minutes to thicken up. So we're going to put this in the refrigerator while our nut crust is baking. And that's it. We've got our layers made. Now we just got to assemble it once that's cooled. All right, now let's finish our dessert. Our nut crust is baked and cooled. Our puddings are ready, so let's get this together. Now, this is the cream cheese mixture that we made. Well, I might as well just put it all on there because it's all going on there. I am having some problems with my wrist, so you're going to have to overlook me. Sometimes I hold this stuff awkward because I have no strength. I don't know what's going on, but that's neither here nor there. So if I appear holding things weird, then you'll know why. All right, now, let's get that deliciousness on there. I like a little offset spatula for this. And you just wanna, it's okay if it kind of, pulls up a little bit of the nuts. It's all right. It's all gonna go the same place. And that's in your stomach. You wanna smooth this over top of the crust. And this is why you want the crust to be cooled. Otherwise, it would just totally melt this cream cheese, and that's not what you want. We just want to get a nice little layer of that. And this is, again, something you can make ahead, a day or two ahead. I don't advise it too much longer than that because you'll eat it and then you won't have any dessert. But it's great the next morning, just saying, with a cup of coffee. It's really good. Then our pumpkin spice pudding. That's very seasonal, so if you like this, you better stock up because it will go away right after Christmas until next year. Do like I do, buy a bunch of it, put it in your pantry because it'll stay, it'll keep, it's good. Then you have it for those times when you want that flavor because it really is good. And there you go. And then to top it off, we are gonna put some Cool Whip or whipped topping of your choice, homemade whipped cream if you want, whatever you like. And you can sprinkle it with some nuts if you want to on top to decorate. I like my little offset spatula better for this. Don't want that pumpkin on there though, so let me wipe that off. It just is easier because it's angled. This is a handy little tool to have in the kitchen, by the way, if you don't have one. Really is quite handy. And I sometimes like to just leave the edges just showing a little bit of the pudding underneath. If you don't have a glass container, that way people can see the pudding. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Up to you. It's your dessert. And then if you want, and I think I do want, to add, if I have some, and I do, some walnuts on top, just to kind of add a little bit of a decorative addition to it. It makes it look prettier and festive. You could use pecans if you wanted. You could use almonds if you wanted.